Friday brought a bit of a turn-up for Everton. The Toffees hit with a 10-point penalty for breaching the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules in the 2021-22 season. Pending an appeal, it drops Everton from 14th to 19th in the table, only above bottom place Burnley on goal difference. It's the biggest ever penalty handed out in the top flight. For comparison, Portsmouth got 9 points. That's the closest we've ever come. And that was for going into administration in 2009-10. But no one's ever got 10 before. Not in the top flight. Your reaction?
Well, I was surprised that it was this severe. And I think people who... I know people like Matt Slater who are very across this kind of world. They were surprised by the severity as well. I think the sense was that it would be... I don't know, that the Premier League might be talking tough, but when it came to it, they might not go quite this tough.
It does seem that one of the motivations for the severity of it is the fact that it was felt that Everton weren't entirely plain in their dealings with the Premier League.
Yeah, I think that's the big reason why they have. I mean, and I wonder as well, talk of a regulator, and there are other clubs where, that are being looked into, whether they did want to make a big statement. They've certainly done that. I mean, I do feel a bit for Everton. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, that with those factors, that they did want to make this statement and show that they are going to come down tough on clubs. But it does set a really interesting precedent, if other clubs find themselves in hot water, which they already have.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to that in a second or two. But we've just been joined by Matt Jones from the Blue Room Everton podcast. Hello, Matt.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, we're very well. What's the mood among Everton supporters?
A bit of a mix, I think. Initially, when this all came out on Friday, there was a lot of surprise. And I think as it's gone on and kind of manifested and settled with the fan base, I think that's kind of changed towards anger over the weekend for a lot of people. And I can only imagine that's going to build and build up to a crescendo on Sunday when 11 lads in blue walk out to face Manchester United.
Yeah, what a fixture that's going to be. I mean, you could be out of the relegation zone again as early as Sunday if you get the result against Man United, which is far from impossible. And the atmosphere sounds like it's going to be incredible from some of the stuff I'm reading.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as fans, it's the only thing that a lot of people feel they can really do at the moment. As much as people can reply to the Premier League Twitter account and do all those sorts of things, what we can impact is what happens on the football pitch. And fan groups over the weekend have already set up GoFundMes for donations in regards to banners and stuff like that. The last time I checked, that surpassed £30,000, which is obviously going to be channeled in the right way. And I think Everton have got some good fixtures coming up from that sense. They've obviously got United on Sunday. You've got Newcastle and Chelsea to come after that as well. All of them are on broadcast slots as well. So I think there's a great opportunity for fans to send their message of what they feel as though has been a little bit of an overreaction from the Premier League.
All right. Interesting. So, Matt, do you feel that punishment was justified for Everton's business dealings, but just not this magnitude?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I've settled at. I think, on Friday I sort of compared it to use a football example, it's the defender leaving the trailing leg out and the attacker going over it and then saying, well, you kind of gave him the chance to go over there, so you could expect the penalty when maybe it's not quite that. So yeah, I think Everton have obviously admitted wrongdoing and that has been counted into their appeal. But from Everton's perspective, I think they put forward a number of mitigating factors, only one of which was taken into consideration, and that was that the club are going in the right direction. And listen, they've been working with the Premier League for a couple of years now. They've had every transfer deal and checked over. The Premier League have been looking over every financial decision. They've been over Everton's shoulder from that point of view. So I feel the club feel like they've been let down a little bit from that perspective, and for the biggest sanction ever in the competition's history to be levied at them, I feel, I kind of get where the anger's coming from.
All right. You've got 2/3 of the season to go, and you have picked up 10 points in your last 5 fixtures. So, in a sense, is this actually quite a good season for this to happen in? Say last year, it might have brought about an entirely different result.
Well, yeah, of course. In the last couple of seasons, I think this points deduction would have been the final nail in the coffin for Everton from a relegation perspective. But yeah, there's no good time for these things to come, is there? But it does feel like if we're going to try and take positives from it, that this time is ideal, because I think even if this had been met out at the start of the season and Everton had started on -10, that feels like a long way to go. Certainly in terms of not knowing what we know about Burnley, Luton and Sheffield United and how they were going to struggle. And of course, if it had come a bit later on and Everton had maybe just been playing matches to try and stay up and been looking towards that 35-point mark, then it might have been a bit too late. So Everton have shown this season that they're a good side. I think they've shown that they're better than the free promoted side, certainly, and a couple of other teams in this league. And it's not too late even for them to react. So plenty of time for this team to overcome this and potentially push on and, like I said, potentially get out to the relegation zone.
Daniel, what's your thoughts on this? We touched on briefly the fact that there are other clubs, and I think a lot of the reaction to Everton picking up 10 points has been, what about Man City and what about Chelsea?
Yeah, the kind of whataboutery Champions League weekend. It was great. We should say the difference, the obvious difference between Everton and Manchester City, and they're the two that have been touted. Everton broke the rules, and effectively their filed accounts admitted that they broke the rules.
Right.
What Manchester City are accused of is systematically cheating to avoid breaking the rules, which is A, far more complicated, and B, there's no one line, there's no accounts filed that proves that. It's a case of building a case against Manchester City, which the Premier League believe they've done, and they believe that their case is strong enough that Manchester City will be punished for that, but it will take longer because it's more complicated. It's far more complicated, and it's, I suppose, slightly politically more sensitive in that, it's not just we can see you've broke the rules. Let's talk about how you've broken. Let's talk about why you've broken them, and then let's work on a punishment. It kind of asks questions of the game itself rather than just a club's set of accounts.
Right.
The other thing to say on Everton, by the way, is that we talked about them last season. Leeds, Leicester, Burnley, Southampton, it seems, potentially another couple of clubs trying to get involved as well in suing Everton for loss of earnings because they went down from the Premier League in a season when they believe Everton were breaking the rules, and they weren't. That potentially would have very grave consequences for Everton, given their financial instability at the moment and the kind of fragile takeover as well.
The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.